Welcome, welcome. We're going to get started here. Erica, my team member, is going to be joining us here momentarily. Um, we had a busy day, so she's running just a hair behind. And we're also having some technical difficulties in getting started this evening. We thought certain softwares that we could utilize were going to be available to us. And yet we're just dealing with what we got. So, welcome. We're talking about affordable housing. Um, we had a little technical difficulty with the live stream, like scheduling it and then initiating the right one. So if you happen to get the notification, it might have come to you twice. But we are going to get going here. So tonight we're talking about, is there such a thing of affordable housing in Portland, and what does affordable housing actually look like? And affordable housing is a challenge. If you've been out there looking in the Portland metro area for some time now, you're probably astonished at how fast the prices have gone up in the Portland metro area. As an agent, I can tell you that um, we're always surprised as well, and sometimes flabbergasted at how prices have really gone up, especially in the last 4 years. When COVID happened, it seemed like the double digit appreciation would never end. And that is not healthy for any uh, real estate market. It truly is not. The last time I was in a double digit appreciation market was in the realm of 2005 through 2007 ish, maybe 2006. And we all know what happened after that. Not that we're in that same climate. We have much healthier loans. We've kind of, we're doing things better this time around. But with the low interest rates that were driving things forward in the COVID era, we had a very unhealthy level of appreciation happening on houses, literally month over month, year over year. And unfortunately, what happens after you get past a market like that, even though, interest rates are higher and, we think things can slow down, we kind of hit a sobering market effect. And the market has been sober. In some cases we're still seeing houses fly off the shelf, but we're not seeing those astronomical like price increases from people going crazy and writing 100,000 over and waiving contingencies and all that stuff. So it's a little bit of a different climate that we're in now, and we're definitely seeing a lot of houses sit on the market, and sometimes even in multiple offer situations, we're not quite seeing the contingencies go away. We're seeing maybe a little bit over the list price or competitively over the list price, but in the affordability price point, we are seeing, that multiple offer effect happen, and it's he who is the strongest buyer. And so we're going to talk about that tonight, and we're going to talk about some areas of town that you can be looking in if you're looking in the $500,000 range, which is our housing affordability. We're going to show you or talk about one that Erica wanted to point out that was really nice for the money at 399. Now, we are not talking about your dream home. That's what we want to be really clear on. There is no dream home for a lot of us who are out there searching really at any price point. And I think a lot of expectations have to get set in order for people to really understand what they can get for the money, and also know that sometimes you have to start somewhere. And that's what we always encourage home buyers to do, is to start with your first house. Have expectations that it's not going to be your dream home. It actually may even need some TLC, some updates, things of that nature. But ultimately, it starts you off on a path where you can at least get started somewhere, build some equity, enjoy putting in your own touches, and then later, what I call lily padding to that next house that allows you to, buy something a little bit more what you're looking for. Maybe you're in a different place in life. Usually, when you're a first time home buyer, you're kind of in a place in life where you maybe don't need a big house. You don't need a big yard. You don't need it to be, have all the bells and whistles. But it's a place to start, and a lot of people enjoy taking a house and kind of transforming it over time, and then gaining the equity, and then moving to the next property, or heck, keep it as an investment property. Um, so we're talking about affordability, and what does affordability look like in Portland? So just to give you some sense of things, the average sales price in Portland is it used to be right around 600. It's actually gone down quite a bit. It's right around that 560 marker last I checked. It seems like we were at 592 and then 580, and then now we're down to the something a little less, which kind of is indicative of the market softening a little bit. We're not seeing those crazy prices, and people's premiums are not kind of always happening. So that's a good thing. We see that that's good. And there's actually inventory to show people in the 500s. So if you're in the 500 price point range, just know that's a great price point that we can get inventory at. And we have been, but it doesn't mean it's not competitive. So actually, Erica, who's going to be here shortly, she has written, she was just in a multiple offer situation with one of our buyers on a house that, needed some work, but solid. And there was quite a few bidders on the property. And it ended up being where they had to go over the list price and they were pretty aggressive. But unfortunately, there was one really aggressive offer. I think it was about 50 grand over the list price to win it. So we are seeing that happen right now. And so it is important that if you're going to look for affordable housing, that you really consider what your budget is and know that in a lot of cases, it may be that you have to sort of compete in order to win those offers. Especially if you're looking in that $500,000 price point. It seems like between 450 and 500, we're seeing that competition really steep. Now, in looking just today at inventory between like 400 to 500, yes, there are single family homes available. Even on the west side, I looked, there's quite a few options. However, a lot of those houses, they might be a fixer, maybe cosmetic, maybe structural, maybe locational challenges. A lot of them just need work. In fact, there was quite a few fixers. So if you're in the 400 range, you kind of got to know your bandwidth. You got to know if you're going to be able to have cash out of pocket to be able to fix a house up. And that could mean cosmetics. And some people can live with not having a lot of cosmetics done, or they're going to go do them themselves. But structural and cosmetics are very different. And so a lot of times people say, oh yeah, I'll take a fixer. And then we're like, okay, let's talk about fixers, because there's structural fixers and then there's cosmetic fixers. Now, most of the time when you talk about those two options, people always go with the cosmetic one, because structural usually means heavy involved intrusive work or permitted type work or walls, or you've really got to do a lot of significant cash out of pocket improvements to make the house livable. And so cosmetic is the fun stuff. If you like to kind of roll up your sleeves and make it your own. And some people don't mind buying like a 1975 house and having most of it be, or a lot of it be, original everything. They're willing to take on project after project, but the structural stuff is the scary stuff for a lot of people because they don't know what they're going to get into, especially if it's like a ton of dry rot, or you need a roof replacement, you have foundation issues, and it can sometimes not even be that the house is in terrible shape. It's just there's so much accumulation of work. Maybe it's deferred maintenance. We see a lot of that, or maybe there's some big ticket items involved in that house. Like maybe it needs a brand new roof and it has drainage issues. And on top of cosmetics, sometimes that just cumulative effect of all of it can really be too much for people. So it's kind of important to know what your threshold is. And in those cases, a lot of times those sellers are looking for somebody who's really handy, sometimes investors. It's priced in a way, like if you see a house priced in the 400s in an area that seems like you never would find it in there, always question what's going on with the house. There's always a reason. And a lot of times our clients will reach out to us and be like, why is this house so cheap? It's in a great area. And it's because it needs a lot of work. And in some cases, it needs so much work that it doesn't even qualify for typical financing, which is what a lot of buyers need to be able to buy a house, meaning an appraiser would go out and look at it and say, this won't pass financing. And then ultimately you can't close escrow. Now, there are loans out there. The FHA 203K is a great option for people who just might need a little bit of renovation or an improvement on the house. Those kind of loans could be an option for somebody with the right house. But in general, most conventional financing, FHA, VA, they want a house to be in a certain level of condition. They don't want to walk in and be like, oh, the roof is shot, there's leaking everywhere, there's, dry rot and the whole 9 yards. Like visually, they can see that it's a problem. So, and if it's listed as a fixer, trust that it's a fixer. Because we get that a lot from people. It's like, oh, it's not bad. I'm sure it's fine. I can fix things up. And yet when they get into it, they realize, oh my goodness. And by the way, I think Erica's here because my dog knows Erica. So just know that if there's a price too good to be true, it's usually indicative of
it's too good to be true.
Too good to be true. Speaking of Erica. All right. So we were just talking about price affordability. and jumping into all the things that Erica's had a day and a week with that whole thing. But I was explaining to them that you wrote an offer for a client of ours whose comfort level is really around 500,000-ish. But found a really good option in that range. And of course, everybody kind of jumped in and wanted to write offers on it. So
this is definitely a market where if it seems too good to be true, like you'll find homes even in the 400s. And if it seems too good, it is too good.
Yeah.
I'm finding there's a lot of agents right now who are pricing below market to get activity. I mean, because we're finding that if you price in your market band, you are sitting.
Yeah.
So
and so we are. So I was explaining that I had done a search on the west side a little while ago, and yes, there are houses in single family homes in the 400s, but almost without fail, all of them were like listed as fixers, or you could tell like locationally it was on a really busy bad road, or
what I'm finding is when I'm looking in the 400s, it's either super small or on a very small lot, or it's conditionally very challenged. You're not finding a super sweet move-in ready home in the 400s. That's not really happening. I am finding there's a weird shift in new construction that I'm finding where a lot of duplex style properties, or I'm sure you've seen them. They're like 3 stories high and only like 1,200 square feet, which means it feels very tiny inside. But they're popping on at the like $400,000 mark. Which is, I mean, if you want something new and you don't need a ton of space, it's a great option. However, they're not going to be right in Portland. Those are in the suburbs kind of. I mean, I've seen them in Newburgh and Forest Grove. I sold some in the low 400s in Bethany, which, like Bethany's got amazing schools. So that's
good location. So again, 400 is not impossible, but it's buyer beware, because you're going to find something that's like, wait, this was the location so good, but like what's going on with it? And we usually can find out really quickly.
There's something.
So our average sales price in the Portland area, which I was kind of going over, is like under 600. It's like 560, 570 and change. It was as high as 600 and 592 not that long ago, which is indicative of our market kind of softening a little bit. Like we're just seeing that, the data points are skewing us down a little bit, but it doesn't mean it's not a hot market, especially right now. We're in spring at the time we're doing this video. And so if you're a buyer in the 500,000 range, we're kind of talking about, be prepared that that's the most affordable price range we have. And so a lot of buyers are trying to find inventory that's not only around the 500-ish range and keep it affordable, but if the house is in decent condition and doesn't require a lot of those cosmetics and structural things, everyone's jumping in and kind of going for it.
It's super true. And I mean, I think the other thing to keep in mind is that like 500 is almost entry level. And you're not always getting a ton of square feet for that. It just means that conditionally it might be a better off. I'm seeing a lot of like 1,300 square feet for 500,000 to 550. And it's insane. If you want something with like 1,500 square feet or over, you're easily 550 to 600. And it, it's unfortunate, but that's just the way. You either, have to go out a little bit further or you have to like be willing to take a little bit less.
Let's talk about going out further, because we do have to have those conversations with a lot of people. And I know when normally we meet with people for buyer consultations, we of course say, where do you want to live? What house are you looking for? But oftentimes that price range dictates location. So
super true.
Sometimes people don't have a lot of money and time and resources to put into a house, and they don't want to. So if they want like a newer home or a home in a little better shape, we start exploring, okay, what areas can you possibly look at that maybe you didn't consider in the beginning? I mean, we do that a lot with people where it's like, hey, I know you want to live in the epicenter of, the east side or west side or whatnot, but have you considered some of these other options around Portland? So what are some of those cities that, sometimes we're opening people's eyes to, because affordability is so hard inside of the Portland metro?
It really is. I mean, places, and this is where the conversation becomes like, are you east side or west side? Where are you going to spend majority of your time? Because if you're going to spend majority of your time on the east side, then, you start exploring areas like Milwaukee or Gladstone, Oregon
which
City,
are great areas.
All fantastic areas. They've got a lot going on. They're growing and expanding and getting all of the, amenities that we like about Portland. But the price points are better. If you're more west side, exploring out to like Forest Grove, Hillsborough, Newburgh even, and some of those other areas, because, Shoals and Tigard are still expensive. Tualatin's expensive. Wilson, anything along that I-5 corridor is going to be expensive, just because of the accessibility.
Now, occasionally you can find something in those areas, like in that 500 zone. But again, it's always like, be aware you're not going to get your dream home. And it's not, we talk about that a lot. We used to say in real estate, it's like, let us find your dream home.
Well, I think that is something too that I think we've lost is, I remember when I bought my first home, it was not my dream home, but I got into the market because that was like, as we were building up, in the bubble, and I knew that I needed to get into the real estate game. I was not in real estate at that time. And it was this townhouse. And I always said, I thought it was the ugliest thing ever. It was a fantastic. It
was cute.
It was fantastic on the inside. And it had all these great things, but it was a compromise. I thought I needed a single family home. I thought I wanted all these things, but my budget didn't allow for that. And, so I think you have to think about how long are you actually going to be in this home? Because most of us are not buying our, forever home right out the gates.
Yeah.
And so, it's balancing what can I get for my budget? Is it more important to spend money on location and take less conditionally? And just remember your first homes are meant to build your equity.
Yeah.
So can you do a few things? It's a,
and when I bought my first home, I didn't love it. In fact, I remember like really that battle in the brain. I was a buyer at the time. I was a realtor at the time, but I was also a buyer at the time. And I remember being like, this is what it feels like to want something. I remember I'd go down the street and I saw these new construction houses that I really loved, but I was like, I don't have the money for that. And I finally settled on a house that kind of checked most of my boxes. But I was still excited because I was like, okay, it's my house. I'm starting something, and I built a lot of equity in that house and later sold it and bought the next one, which I actually didn't like the second one either, only because I was trying to get over to a certain location and I knew I had to compromise. And I only lived in that house for a year, but I made a lot of equity in it in just a very short amount of time. And sometimes that works out. And then I bought a house that I thought I'd made it. I was like, wow, that house is great. And I lived in there for like 12 years or 11 years, loved it. And then we moved to the house we're in now. And it's like, you're lily padding all along the way. And that's what we tell people to do is, just keep your expectations in check. And, it's the alternative is, we were talking today about like, you could potentially be paying a landlord $100,000 in rent easily in a 4-year time frame here in Portland, just based on the average rent costs. And it's $100,000 going towards a landlord. Plus, you get no tax incentive.
No, you don't get anything out of it. I mean, I think when you think about it, you're only thinking, oh, it's $2,000 or $3,000 a month.
Yeah.
However, that adds up. And we've talked to people who have rented, and there's nothing wrong with this, but like who have rented for 18 years in the same house, and I'm like, man, you could have like bought that. I mean, there's some risk that goes along with it, but when you think about it, my thought with getting into the market is like, if you can do it.
Yeah.
And there is, I was looking even just today, like there is stuff at every price point. You can get a condo and everything appreciates, like, I mean, I think about my first townhouse that I bought, which that's what it was. It was an attached townhouse. And, by the time that I went to sell it, I think I like tripled what I paid for it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane. Everything will go up, it all fluctuates with the market, but you can build equity in it, in a condo, in a townhouse, in a single family home. So get in where you can, and then go from there.
And let me just speak to one other thing before we kind of jump into like where we're going to focus on, like talking about affordability for homes. Buying a house is not just an investment. I know a lot of people are like, they were always worried about it being this perfect investment. It's a lifestyle. Once you buy your house, you're not thinking every day like, oh, I hope it goes up in value today. I hope it didn't go down today. Of course, you're always curious about what your property value is. Who isn't? But you're not like, oh my gosh, this isn't, let's like, you're living in it. You get to paint the walls, you get to do the landscaping, you get to walk your dogs in the neighborhood or whatnot. So it's a lifestyle investment, maybe is what, the way to look at it too. So, all right. So let's talk also about like more about the areas in town that are affordable. So can we find, let's just kind of go around
Portland.
We wanted to have some visuals for you guys tonight, but we had some technical difficulties, but we're just going to roll with it because that's how we roll. So when we talk about affordability, again, we're talking about between like, say, I mean, yes, in the 300s too, but you can get only typically townhomes and condos in that 300 zone.
Unless you're going down to Salem, which you can find some stuff in the like mid 300s in Salem. Still, conditionally, it's not going to be perfect, and there's a lot of like things there. But yeah,
and we have sold in Salem just in the last year for people who said, "Here's my budget," and then we'd had the conversation, which is, "Hey, that budget usually, are you okay with a townhome or condo? Are you okay with single family home?" Then they said, "Let's see what Salem has to offer," and they were open to location, and that worked out. So let's just kind of let's start on the west side. So on the west side, we are talking about, can you get a single family home in the west side, say around like 450 to 500?
Barely. I mean, I say, you know, like maybe in that 475 to 500 range. Now you could go up north a little bit into like the Scappoose, St. Helens area, and that's a little bit more affordable if you're looking for single family homes. You know, and again, this conversation goes to like, yes, they're there. But if you're looking in Hillsborough or Beaverton, even Newburgh, it's pretty slim pickings to find a single family home. There's usually conditionally something going on with that price, because we just don't have anything there. You know, I mean, unless it's like 500 square feet and it's a detached condo, basically.
Our prices have just really pushed up. So so on the west side, like she said, like if you can get into the low 500s, you have a lot more opportunities for properties. Again, they might have some, you know, conditional issues, like, you know, I think you showed one the other day that was on a busier road. You know,
busier road, animal smells, functionally like weird floor plans, those type of things, or next to like a business. You know, those are the type of things that you're going to run into. And you know, I always caution as well. That's something that you will have to take into account, like, you know, when you sell. It will affect your value to some degree, but if it's, you know, it will still go up to some degree.
Yeah, good point. Because like sometimes, you know, if you're sitting on a busy road, if a house is sitting on a busy road, we usually point out this is going to affect you in resale. Now, in an affordability price point, in this case, there was a couple of offers on it, despite it being on a busier road, right? Was that the right one that I'm thinking of?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, never mind. I thought there was. I thought we put a backup offer in on.
No, that one's not on a busy road.
Okay, never mind. But yeah, busy roads are a kicker. Now, if it's conditional and you can fix it and change it, then it's no big deal, because you can change that. But things you can't change, you have to be really eyes wide open on. So, so in the 500s, what do you get up to like 550? What's like the average square footage we're seeing, bedrooms, baths?
This is where it gets really interesting, you know, in my opinion, because you can get, if you've got some ability to put like elbow grease and cosmetics into a home, then you can actually get probably 15, 16, maybe even 1,700 square feet, you know, in that 5 to 550 range. If you want it to be turnkey and you want to be like, as I call it, Pinterest ready or Pinterest cute, then you're looking at probably like 12 to 1,300 square feet. The other thing that plays a factor in this is like your lot size. So I feel like there's a big divide these days. You know, some people really want that big older lot, and some people don't want anything. Now, if you don't want anything, it's going to help you out. In that
we can find a lot of that around.
But if you want the bigger lot, and when I say bigger, I'm talking like probably about 7,000 up to quarter acre. Those are healthy size lots for homes these days, because we just don't see them very often in new construction. I mean, those are kind of went away in, I would say, the 80s probably. And so those homes and those lots tend to go for more. And especially if you have good, you know, square footage. But you know, I've been showing a lot of fixers, heavy cosmetic fixers, structurally sound homes, good locations, and they're ranging in the 5 to 550 range. So, and
I think now if you can get to 550 up to 600, the game changes a lot.
It opens up.
It does, because, you know, we have sold some even this year where, you know, in that under that 600 marker is a I mean, it really, like, you can get newer-ish type homes with really healthy floor plans. You can get 4 bedrooms. You know, I think we sold one for $599 in Beaverton on L Court, and that was just under 6. And boy, we held an open house on that thing, and it was like nonstop traffic coming in on that. And everybody was a buyer. They were pre-approved. They were actively looking for properties. And that just goes to show the demand we had on that. They didn't have multiple offers per se, but there was a heavy amount of demand. I think we would have, eventually maybe seen more than one party step forward at some point. But yeah.
And that was an interesting property because it was good square footage. I think it was close to 2,000 square foot.
Right under that. Yep.
Yeah, just under 2,000 square feet, but it didn't have a huge lot.
Yeah.
And if we're being, super honest, that one also was not that far off a busy road.
Correct.
And that's still, but it was newer. It was like only less than 5 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It actually had a really great curb appeal. It kind of had a very modern look to it. And it was kind of in this little pocket area. Like one thing you see a lot in Portland is the builders, because there's not a lot of land, they'll take like they'll take a lot and they'll kind of subdivide it up and they'll put maybe like 8 homes in there or 10. It was in one of these little pocket areas, but and also because it was in Beaverton, Aloha area, I think half the people that came through the open house worked at Intel. I mean, there's a lot of demand for housing. Obviously, Intel
or Nike
or Nike. Yeah, that was true too. There's just a ton of people coming in for jobs, in the area because Intel is one of our biggest employers, and so and that's also why they're pushing out. Like there is new construction. I mean, you can buy new construction, in that 500, 600 range.
But something to think about that is you're not always getting a single family home.
True. Like maybe an attached or.
Yep. Yeah. A lot of attached homes, a lot of cottages or alley entrance type homes. The detached, like single family homes, especially like closer in the Tigard's, Beavertons, even kind of Hillsborough, that you're not finding a lot of single families up to 6.
Yeah.
It's getting a little bit difficult.
Yeah. So it's one of those where kind of knowing what you're open to. Like we have some people that they don't want to see their neighbors or they want a bigger lot, and you're going to take on an older home because like she had said, they built, homes back in the day with bigger lots, but nowadays it's all about density and how much they can kind of squeeze in. You've kind of seen the lots go like this over time. And also there's affordability, because affordability is such an issue and housing is. A lot of these builders are required to put in more affordable housing. So when you hear about that, you'll notice like if you see subdivisions and building going on, you'll see they required to put in.
Yeah, there's actually an interesting thing too, where like in Portland, you find this more often. You'll see this amazing price on a property. Like I was looking and I saw a new construction home that was like silly cheap. I mean, I think it was like $450 or something like that, or under 400 or right around. Anyways, but they are income restricted. So those homes have 2 prices basically. If you qualify for income restricted or, or at that point, then you get the better price. And those again are part of those deals where builders can get, certain incentives for building these type of properties. However, just know, again, that's almost if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. That, just read the fine print on those. And it pops up pretty quickly. The other thing I thought might make sense to talk about is that like condos, like if you are looking at a condo because price point, it makes more sense for you. HOAs are obviously part of that game. They take care of all the exterior structures. And when you're talking with your lender, it's going to be really important that you factor in. You're going to have an estimate for what your HOA is going to be when you're looking for property, because they have to account for the HOA in your income. So it is kind of a balancing act. Like, you look at some of the condos downtown and they have like ridiculously cheap prices, but then the HOA is like $600 a month.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to decide. Now there's better options. And, townhomes are generally less when it comes to the HOA factor. Don't let HOAs scare you. I think that, you can still get a lot of really good properties that don't have super crazy, horror stories.
Yeah.
But that is a contingency when you write an offer, that you get to have a period with which to review all those documents and make sure that there's nothing that's going to, concern you or restrict how you're using the property.
Yeah. And she's right. I mean, the hardest part is if you're open to townhomes and condos, but your budget's super tight at say, $450 or $425 or $400, and there's, inventory in those price points, those HOAs could mean that you're really looking at a house for like $500.
Yeah.
I actually showed a property that we had listed to a buyer who was so excited because she was pre-approved. It was $425, showed it to her. She was literally texting with her lender as we were looking at the property, and she was, going through and literally halfway through the showing was like, oh no, I can't afford this. And I thought, oh, what happened? And she's like, well, I just texted them the HOA dues per month, which I think were right around like 300. And she's like, that would mean I'd have to buy the condo at like 385. And I was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So, that is a huge thing. And even if you're being pre-approved for a house, like some houses, like the one we just talked about in Beaverton that we sold, the HOA dues was about $100 a month, and that covered some landscaping and some different things. But that's $100 a month extra. So really important to kind of pay attention to all those little nuances when you're kind of looking around.
But there's some great options when it comes to townhouses. I'm actually a big proponent of townhouses. I think they can be a great option.
Let's identify what's the difference between townhomes and condos.
Really good. Important. So especially because there's a lot of detached condos these days. So with a townhouse, you actually own land. You own that little plot, and sometimes this is a very small plot of land, but you do own that actually, which is I consider having the land the benefit, and then with a condo, you own from basically what we call the studs in. You own a space. It's like owning a room within this bigger structure of building. And so that's why the HOAs are generally higher with the condos, is because that HOA, which is like the homeowners association, is taking care of all those exterior structures. And sometimes they include like trash and water and, some more amenities than say a townhouse would. But generally on a townhouse, you're going to have like exterior maintenance cover, features covered like roof and siding. And that's because they're kind of continuous, Now you do occasionally find no HOA, like duplex style townhomes. And the only thing, that's great. Just know that that's a little bit, of a sticky situation. If you need to do something, if like the roof needs to get replaced and your neighbor doesn't want to, then you got to figure out how to like right down the middle there.
We've seen people do it.
It's so crazy. But, I'm a big proponent of townhomes because while you do have a neighbor, it's a great way to get in. You own some land. Sometimes you can get like a little yard with them.
Yeah.
My first townhome was awesome. I was an end unit. I had extra parking and I had a huge yard.
Yeah.
So there's some fantastic options, and you use that as your move up. It's just, I think
and sometimes you can get into the location you want. Like if location's a big deal for you, which we find it is for a lot of people, a townhome is a fantastic option to get into that location on the budget that you have. So don't be afraid of townhomes, but definitely do your due diligence on that. Okay. So, if we're in Hillsborough area,
Hillsborough's gotten a little bit expensive because you get a lot of Intel people out there. I think it's a fantastic area. I've lived out there, for a while. But you can find stuff in the fives. You can find some cute homes in the fives.
Yeah. There's Reed's Crossing, which is the big new construction out there. Like there's plenty, like we sold a townhome there late last year.
There's so Reed's Crossing is 8,000 units.
Yeah.
And it's been in the works for freaking ever, but you're going to pay a lot to get in there. Into Reed's Crossing, you're paying $500 for an attached home. I think the detached homes are starting in the 7s and 8s now.
There are some. The one we sold was $385.
Yeah, but that was
2-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage. But you don't really have your own yard. It was you're kind of opening up into like there's a lot of variety of housing in Reed's Crossing. That one was unique because it kind of acted like almost like its own house, because it kind of only shared one wall, but it looked like its own house. And it had a 2-car garage out front, which is nice because you don't always get 2-car garages side by side. But it didn't have a yard. You do walk out into like a shared area, and it had a courtyard. But anyway, there is housing available. But again, that had a high HOA per month.
And Reed's Crossing, just so people know, like it's a planned community. They've got shopping that's been, built in there. They added a school. They've got a ton of walking trails and, green areas. it's a nice area, but it is a very planned community. If you're familiar with like Villebois down in Wilsonville,
Yep.
Very similar effect. A lot of homes that all look the same. You could get lost very easily. I've always like been concerned about living in a place like that because I know I would get lost and walk into the wrong house.
I had to stay in a house like that not that long ago, and it's just a different feel. You have to be okay with, obviously with new construction, you're going to have a lot of new construction going on, and that's another thing to consider. But let's go further down, say I-217, I-5. So Tigard, Tualatin, what kind of inventory can we get?
Tualatin's a little tough. There's a few pockets of new construction, but for the most part, you're looking at some like 70s, 80s, 90s homes. And oddly, you just don't get a lot coming on the market there. It's slim pickings in Tualatin, I feel like. Wilsonville's kind of the same. You have some, options available if you're open to that, but really it just doesn't open up. There's not a lot of inventory there. Again, some new construction. The new construction in Wilsonville, though, is generally pretty spendy. Yeah. Unless it's in Villebois. Well, it's still expensive in Villebois. And you're looking, $800,000-$900,000 for a detached home. Yeah. And again, but Wilsonville is one of those like little bedroom communities where, people like it for the schools. They like it because it's a little bit quieter. It's got a cute little, town center, but you're close to the country. They've got some nature parks. You've got some river access. So it's a nice like suburb.
Yeah. Now let's talk about Canby. If people think, hey, I'm going further out to Canby, what about affordability in Canby?
You can get actually, I will say, so there's some great townhomes in Canby right now, built by a local builder, and they're priced well, like low 400s, like under 450. Okay. So, and the super low HOA, I think they're a steal. I think if you're in the market and you want to be out there, it's a fantastic option. Some of the older homes you can get like high 4s, low 5s, but Canby is like this, again, little bedroom community that everybody wants to be. It is a cult following. It's not quite as strong as like the Sellwood, but like people love it. The schools are great. It's got a small town feel to it. And prices are expensive. Yeah. I have sold new construction with a builder out in Estacada, which is like kind of deep east side. And then that same builder is building in Canby right now. And it's, I think, about $200,000, $150,000 to $200,000 more for the same floor plan.
That's a big difference. And they're both considered further. I mean, Estacada is more further out. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you sold a couple that were in like, what was the price points on those two? So, and they were nice.
They were both super nice homes. Good square footage. I think one was like 17 and change, one was 18 and change. Now we also got like super, I don't know how we scored these deals because they were a little ridiculous.
We got right around the holidays. The builders were motivated.
I think we got one right before Christmas to close, and the one was like right after Christmas. But I think we were at like 450 for the first one, the 1,700 square foot, and then we were at like 500 for the larger one, which also had a 3-car garage.
That's impressive because they had really tough to find that.
Yeah, cute little yards. Nothing. Yeah. There might be I think they were possibly going to build behind there at some point, but nothing anytime soon. And they were great properties, and established suburb community, and Estacada is actually one that is really growing. Yeah. And I think what we forget sometimes is that if you're able to be further out, great option. Take them. Yeah. Buy into those communities when you can. I mean, I think people are kicking themselves in Canby for not having bought into that community sooner because it is expensive. I mean, so that same builder is selling like 1,100 square feet for $500,000 brand new. 1,100 square feet. Yeah. That's nothing.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And that's what we mean too. Like a lot of people think Estacada is like this way out podunk farm town. If you haven't been out there in a while, it's actually kind of booming. I mean, they have lots of subdivisions that have gone in over the last, 8 to 10 years and continuing to, and that's where the builders are going. I mean, that's affordable new construction. The builders are going further out because they can buy the land for cheap and they can actually make the numbers work building a $450,000, $500,000 house.
And some of that has to do as well with like the counties. So not being in Multnomah County or like the Tri-County area, which generally tends to be more expensive. Although I guess that is technically Clackamas County, but Woodburn is another place that's super affordable. If you don't mind driving a little bit, like it's probably been 2 years ago now. But again, in 2 years ago, I was able to sell, and they actually still have some single family homes in the like mid 400s that you can get down there, new construction. And so it's, you know, if you can make that drive or if that location works for you, tons of options there.
Yeah.
So
I mean, what we always tell people is like when we typically talk to them and they're budget conscious, we always kind of help them open their mind up a little bit to the possibilities of not just staying in the one area they thought about because, Portland is kind of a big, small town and it is easier sometimes. We're shocked when we can say to somebody, look, you can hop on the freeway and get up the freeway faster than if you're deep on the east side trying to commute to your job on the west side. So because traffic patterns get really sticky inside of Portland that you'd be surprised. Some of these further out places, the drive is not that much different or maybe even faster depending. So, but it does depend on where you're wanting and able and willing to look to be flexible on that piece of it. So,
another place on the east side that I'm finding, and this is a nice option for people who especially, acreage generally isn't included in the affordability conversation.
But let's talk about it because it is. I mean, some people are looking for smaller
really
or bigger acreage.
But like places like Molalla, great option. That's a growing town too. It's very cute. They've got some industry out there. But you can still get homes in the low 400s, really nice homes in the 500s, where you're getting some square footage. And I've had people who, they worked in Wilsonville and they, initially wanted to be closer in, but then when they realized what they could get there or what they could get if they went out to like Molalla, it was a no-brainer for them.
Yeah.
And, they were like, oh, okay, cool. And you're getting nice homes and, why wouldn't you?
Yeah. And that's the thing is like everybody has to kind of figure out what they're open enough to doing. And even if, and going back to kind of the acreage topic, we do get people who want to live out in the, like have some land and land is so expensive, you guys. I mean, it's ridiculous what things go for with, and we understand the need for wanting not to be in a subdivision and kind of being further out. So I would say, what's the range of affordability that somebody can expect when they're saying they're shopping for like acreage? Like what is that affordability sweet spot?
I think you minimally need to be, like probably close to about 700,000 if you're looking for anything over like an acre or so. And this is again where that caveat comes in that you may find some like derelict homes. You'll find some heavy remodels. But if you're looking for a move-in ready home, like you're minimally going to be probably around $700,000.
Yeah. Or unless the house is really tiny.
Yeah.
And doesn't maybe have a lot of outbuildings or things like that. But like she said, probably derelict, a lot of that going on. But still, I mean, if a lot of people are buying houses in suburbs in the $600,000 and $700,000 range, but you can go get acreage property for, $700,000, you're still kind of coming out ahead. And what are some of those areas that you, like if somebody came to you, Erica, and was like, I want acreage, I can look up to say 750, prefer to be around 7, but I can push it up. Where would you, and maybe they have some open-mindedness about where they'd be looking in Portland. Where would you sort of like guide them? You're
going to be in a real wide circle around Portland, basically. So you can get it, say like St. Helens, you could get it in Gaston.
Is Hillsborough an option?
No, not really.
Yeah,
you're usually
not without some derelict. not without some derelict.
Or some functionally, like I've seen some. There's some areas of and this is something that's important. We'll do this again on acreage properties, but like, what happens to the land? Like, does it hold a lot of water? Because there's some areas in Hillsborough where you can get acreage for reasonably priced, but like it floods half the year or 2/3 of the year. So generally, no, you're going to be out. You're going to be like hitting Yamhill County. So Gaston, possibly Yamhill if it's smaller acreage, McMinnville, and then you kind of swing around on the east side. You're looking Molalla, Malino, maybe Oregon City if it's, not super turnkey, really cute. Can be, you're probably getting into the mid to high 7s. So yeah. And then, there's some other place like Scotts Mill, which is kind of outside of Molalla. It's getting a little bit further like south and east. You can get stuff out there usually. But yeah, I mean, our acreage is just kind of shot up. You can look at prices from 2-3 years ago even, and it's astronomical. So, and you may be looking for a while because they don't always pop up.
Yeah. You got to be on a heavy search.
Yeah. I mean, I just bought some acreage and it was a year of consistent searching to find a property that was, in a budget that worked for me. So, and at the end of the day, like great property, tiny house. And, I had to add outbuildings. So it's just getting the land. And that's where I say, like, if you have the choice to maybe do a smaller home and get a larger lot, like get the larger lot.
Yeah.
It's, not that doing an addition or anything like that is easy, but you can adjust your living space. You can't adjust the land.
Yeah.
So that's my perspective on things. I'm a big fan of having a bigger lot, a little bit more space.
Yeah.
So,
and one thing we talked about actually earlier today was that it's almost more expensive to find those like junior acres because everybody's like, oh, I just want an acre or I want 2 acres or less. They want something really manageable. They want to have privacy. They want a little bit of land. And why is that so much more of an inexpensive option?
I think because it's that middle ground, it's like, it's, a better option for everybody. I mean, when you start getting like 2, 3, 4 acres, like that requires some maintenance, but anything I feel like from like a third to an acre and a half, man, that's super desirable.
Yeah.
Because it is that like nice little like estate type, even if you don't have a fancy house on it, but like it's that estate acreage.
Yeah.
Where you can have a lot of fun with it. Super cool. And there's not a lot of them left, to be honest. I mean, that's the other thing is I think, and that's kind of how those subdivisions come about, those little pockets of, 8, 10 homes, is that you find somebody who has 2 acres or an acre that was left in the city and they ripped down the house that was on it and they decided to build these, sell to a developer.
Yeah.
So if you have those and a house that's reasonable, in good shape, living condition, and the space and you're close in, it's game changer.
And also some people ask us a lot that are really trying to focus on affordability is like, can I just buy a piece of land and put a manufactured home on it or a mobile home or whatever? And that is tricky because let me explain how that kind of works.
Yeah.
Yes, you can, but it may not be as affordable as you think because oftentimes what people don't realize is number one, it has to be zoned a certain way. And then you got to put in typically the well and the septic, and you're probably looking at $40,000 to $50,000, depending on if you need a sand filtration system, gravity fed septic, or how deep is the well got to be before you hit water.
Yeah.
And that's just for those utilities. That's not including maybe bringing in power or deciding if you're going to do some other method. And then you got to buy the manufactured home, and those aren't exactly cheap anymore either. I mean, you're probably looking at
easily, if you want some square footage, you're looking at probably close to $200,000.
Right.
You can probably find them closer to 150 if you don't want like them to be built as nice or energy efficient. But you're probably about $200,000 for that. You're about $100,000 generally to plan for the utilities. You're building out the pad, any excavation, putting a road in.
Yeah. And by the way, just buying a nice piece of land,
it's not cheap.
It's not cheap. I mean, honestly, like be suspicious if it's under $250,000.
If it's I mean, that's an interesting thing because I have, a lot of buyers who like to look for land and that is a thing. Some land you can't put a manufacturer on, as Ann said. And then some of it isn't actually even buildable. Like it's got to have a buildable lot, so there's some stuff that's zoned just for farming or just for recreational use. You can't actually like put a home on it.
Or where you can put a home on it means you have to build like a long, expensive driveway into the far back because a lot of times there's like environmental overlays or, even where your septic goes. That we had a property one time that this is where the county said you could put the house, but the septic system would run into the neighbors, like the drain field. So land is tricky. Each one is case by case. You have to do your homework on it. And that's why, sometimes it can take time. Like don't ever take anything at face value with land, even if it's a good price or if it's in your price point. We need to do the research. We need to find out what you can and can't do with it. And then you need to work your way backwards, which we're very experienced with land. We can pretty much outline for you, okay, this is going to run you X out of pocket to do it. So it never really pencils out for people the way they think. Now you can buy a property that has maybe a older mobile home on it, fix it up or put something else on it. But to just come from bare land, there's a lot of out-of-pocket expense.
Yeah. And the land is interesting because it's, I mean, minimally, you're probably like $300,000, $250,000 to $300,000 for a small acreage plot. And that's bare land. Maybe utilities are at the thing. So you can figure if you're $300,000 in for land, you're $100,000 minimally for, your utilities, a road, a pad, and then $200,000. So you're at what, $600,000 for that manufactured. And if you have to do any clearing, so just know that like excavation work can be expensive. Putting a road down, oddly, it's unsexy, but gravel is expensive. And it's not the product itself, it's the, having somebody come in, because you need dump truck loads. You need like 10, 20, 30 dump truck loads, depending on how long you need to make that the road. And that's the other
That could
thing.
be another $50,000
Easily. I mean, I've looked at property where, it was $200,000, but you needed easily $100,000 just for your road to get you into the build site. So there's so many caveats that it is kind of a buyer beware. And it is also if it's too good to be true, it's too good to be true. So.
Yeah. Usually buying resale is a lot easier on the pocketbook, and
it really is.
And then you don't have any surprises. But anyway, that is our discussion tonight on affordability. We didn't cover all of Portland. Just know that there's always areas that we can talk about and explore. And that's what we do. If somebody's on a budget and they are really focused on affordability, we explore all those options. We take them to those areas. We do sell all over Portland Metro because some of our clientele just needs to be in certain pocket areas.
Yeah.
So if that's you, or you have questions about, hey, I don't know what my budget is, or here's my budget. Is this even realistic to get out there and start? At least have the conversation. We're happy to help direct you, sit with you, take a phone call about what does that look like for your situation. Affordability does exist, but it takes some hunting, and it takes some patience, and it takes some, maybe some expectation setting. So yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight on our live. We're going to be posting this on our YouTube channel for others to watch in the coming days. And if you guys have any other topics you want us to cover live, we plan on doing more of these.
Yeah. Let us know.
We would love to have that interaction. And so we'll see you on the next video. Bye, everyone.